with the electoral process, completely illegal, wrong, needs to be looked at and
to look at it, it's looking at one particular community and how they voted in that by-election.
But there's a difference between that, isn't there, and Muslim voters deciding reasonably en masse that there are certain parties that represent their interests, and they come to that view as individuals. Ethnic minority communities have always done that throughout democratic history. Why is it a problem when...
Did Priti Patel just walk straight into one of the most awkward political contradictions we've seen in a while? Because what started as a routine TV interview suddenly turned into something very different, a moment where the talking points began to fall apart in real time. In this video, we're breaking down the moment Priti Patel found herself completely cornered on live television, as serious questions were raised about what many are calling a glaring double standard surrounding the recent Gorton and Denton by-election. And let's just say, once the pressure started building, the answers only became more uncomfortable. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, on the surface, this might seem like just another political disagreement, another politician defending their party line, another interview that comes and goes. But the deeper this conversation goes, the harder it becomes to ignore the contradictions being exposed in plain sight. Because what happens when politicians criticize one group of voters for backing parties that reflect their interests, while defending the exact same strategy when it benefits them? That's where things start getting very messy. And during this exchange, Priti Patel is challenged directly on that very question, live, on air, with nowhere to hide from the comparison being laid out in front of her. So let's watch this together, break it all down piece by piece, and at the end, I'll give you my full thoughts on what this moment really says about the state of politics right now.
Weakness.
Briefly, in other news, domestic news, lots of Labour pain in the Gorton by-election, of course, but isn't the other lesson of that by-election that if you want to oppose this government from the right in seats in urban northern England and similar, that you vote for a party getting 27% of the vote, i.e. Reform, not a minor party status in seats like this, yours, with 2%.
So I think we have to remember that that particular constituency was Labour's sixth most safest seat. You know, we were not contenders in that by-election at all. The real issue about that by-election, the real story, is just the fact that people have lost faith in this government and in Keir Starmer. He's got no authority whatsoever.
No faith in you in their place.
I've made it quite clear to you that is not a Conservative seat where we were in contention. It is Labour's.
You should do better in it.
It was Labour's sixth safest seat. So on that basis alone, it was clear that it was a battle for Labour and Labour's vote, and Labour is a party of the left, and people have chosen to abandon
and if you're
the
on the
Labour
right,
Party.
If you're on the right, which 27% of the people in that constituency are, they turn to Reform and not you.
Well, I don't know how you can describe Reform. I'm not here to be a commentator on Reform.
They're a party of the right, aren't they?
I'm telling you now. Well, they've
got lots of your ex-colleagues in for a start.
Well, they voted with Labour on on various issues such as welfare and the two-child cap. So I don't think they can.
You don't think they're a party of the right?
They can't associate themselves with the Conservative Party.
They don't want to do that.
So look, the reality is that we were not in contention in that seat, and it was Labour's sixth most safest seat. So this is obviously a crisis in the Labour Party.
Your leader released a statement in the aftermath of that by-election where she described, quote, Labour created the monster of the Muslim community block vote. What does she mean by that?
Well, she was pointing out to the sectarian voting that is clearly now taking place.
Why is it sectarian?
But on the basis that it was very much targeted at particular... I mean, if you look at some of the tactics that the Green Party have used and all the rest of it, and the fact now that potentially the Electoral Commission are looking into the voting trends and patterns that took place in that constituency, Lewis, we should be concerned about that.
We should,
we live in a democracy, and that should be looked at. So I don't think we can overlook that issue whatsoever.
No, nor should we. But aren't, Dame Priti, those two quite distinct things? Obviously, if there's been any interference with the electoral process, completely illegal, wrong, needs to be looked at and
to look at it, it's looking at one particular community and how they voted in that by-election.
But there's a difference between that, isn't there, and Muslim voters deciding reasonably en masse that there are certain parties that represent their interests, and they come to that view as individuals. Ethnic minority communities have always done that throughout democratic history. Why is it a problem when Muslims do it?
Well, primarily in this particular case, because it's specific to this particular by-election, I think we should just recognise that.
Not was talking about something that happened more historically than that. She's talking about Labour created the monster of the Muslim community.
Because of course they have recently clearly been playing the Muslim community in terms of securing their own electoral base.
You mean targeting the Muslim community?
Their politics when it comes, look at the politics in their own party.
But your party is, for example, targeting voted British Indian voters in recent elections. Why is that any different?
No, that's a choice for them in terms of how they vote. We're not telling them how to vote.
But that's a choice for Muslims, how they vote.
I think in this by-election it was very particular, and I think now that there are going to be potential investigations by the Electoral Commission.
This is a video that the 2019 election that your then colleague Shailesh Vara put out aimed specifically at British Indian voters.
इस देश को आज बचाना है कुछ करके हमें दिखाना है तो वोट करो बोरिस जॉनसन वोट करो बोरिस जॉनसन ब्रिटेन के पीएम बनेंगे बोरिस जॉनसन
Conservatives, British Indians. Is that sectarian?
That's his part of an election campaign, a national election campaign that all political parties do.
That's what the Green Party were doing, targeting Muslim voters.
You could have shown the one for the Labour Party that they probably ran in that election, and other political parties as well.
I'm not saying it's improper, but your leader is saying there's something improper about targeting particular communities.
We should absolutely say in this instance, this could potentially be looked at by the Electoral Commission in terms of voting patterns within the Muslim community. That is something not to be dismissed or taken lightly.
I'm not
and I think on that basis, until we see further details, which are now being questioned, the Labour Party has clearly been targeting, and we saw that during the last general election against the Gazan independents, and we know that they're incredibly insecure now as a political party, and they have been targeting the Muslim vote through their own national policies, such as Palestine two-state solutions.
Different votes. Historically, the Jewish vote, Indian vote.
It has changed, Lewis. It has changed. You've seen that. You've seen that since the last general election, and the way the Labour Party in particular have been behaving around Gaza and their own voter base. And I think that was tantamount and paramount in this particular by-election.
One final thing.
And here's the biggest problem with this entire argument. How is it suddenly community politics when Muslim voters back parties that speak to their concerns, but completely normal when conservatives target other demographics with tailored campaigns? Because, let's be honest, every political party appeals to groups they think will support them. That's politics. So why act like this election was somehow different? For many critics, this looks less like concern for democracy and more like frustration that voters simply chose a different option. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more political analysis.